Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about people pleasing because this is a really big topic. We all people please to some degree. And so, we're going to talk about why we're getting stuck in this loop of people pleasing, maybe why women sometimes do it more than men, and how you can get out of that cycle, what you can do to stop people pleasing and be a little bit more authentic to you.
Yeah, because being our authentic selves gives us some of our energy back and makes us be more resilient. So, we all want that, right? I think.
Yeah, sure. That sounds great. And also, we've been talking a lot about the mental load lately. If you're people pleasing constantly, you are adding so much to your mental load because in the back of your mind, you're constantly trying to figure out what would make the other person happy. And
Yeah,
that takes a lot of mental energy. So if you could lessen that load, it would take a lot off your plate.
I'm definitely a recovering people pleaser, like big time people pleaser. I feel like I spent most of my life people pleasing, and then not people pleasing has been amazing.
Yeah. I used to I don't know if I've ever like really been a hardcore people pleaser, but there's still some situations in my life where I start to lean towards that a little bit more, like maybe with work or people that I don't know very well and I want to make sure that they like me, Sometimes I just want people to like me too. So sometimes I'll do that, but I and especially since doing all this work in mental health have taken a pretty radical approach to not people pleasing. And I will say that can make you come off as like cold or unapproachable or not very friendly to people unless they really know you. But I would take my radical non people pleasing approach over being a people pleaser any day. It's
Yeah.
great.
A lot of my friends that are like zero on the people pleasing are actually in like really successful job positions. And
Hmm.
like own your business. And I think that it does strip away. I mean, we all only have so much time in a day. I think it does free up a lot of time, honestly.
It does. And I think, especially for women, society has taught us to kind of like be pleasant, be polite, be seen and not heard, help take care of other people. And when you're doing that, you're just shrinking yourself. And then naturally, other opportunities won't come to you. And you're going to be more stressed and anxious and maybe have this feeling of like, what am I even doing with my life or who am I? And
Yeah.
so, the more and I'm not saying you shouldn't compromise with people or do things for other people, but you're supposed to live your life for you and not other people.
Yeah. I have seen people take this. It's so funny. Like as we're going through a healing journey, we kind of swing from one end of the pendulum to the other until we find our center. And I
Yeah.
have seen on social media people post videos about, loving myself means being a bitch to everyone. And it's like, no, that's
Oh.
not true. You're going through that part, but we can do both. You can be such a loving, considerate person and still honor your own boundaries and be authentic to yourself.
Yeah. And I think people get really stuck in that people pleasing cycle because they're afraid other people will think that they're a bitch or that they're
Oh, for
mean or
sure.
that they don't care. And that's not your problem. That's the other person's problem who's doing that, which it's easy to say, hard to live through.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, let's go over some examples. And I think most people know what people pleasing is, but let's go over some examples in case they don't. The biggest thing that comes to mind for me is saying yes to someone when you do not have the time.
Ooh, that's a good one. Like I think about for me, yeah, offering to do things that really messed up with my schedule or doing something I didn't want to do just because the other person wanted to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Other things are like staying in relationships for way too long because you don't want to upset the other person. Or when someone asks you for help at work, or if you're in school and someone says, "Hey, will you help me with this assignment or study with me?" And you just say yes to be nice, but you don't have time. Like anything you're doing like that, taking on extra tasks that you just don't want to do.
Yeah, the taking on extra tasks. And then for me, it's come up a lot of being in a room with people who have a very different ideology and worldview than I do. And just like, because I want them to like me, I just wouldn't be super vocal, which is a form of people pleasing. Like you're
It
still
is.
fawning. Like you're not sharing your authentic self because you're just pleasing to what their worldview is.
Yeah. And Rachel, I know you had looked up kind of what this has to do with fight or flight. And there's like
Yes.
fight, flight, freeze, and fawn now.
Yes. Yeah.
What does this have to do with fight or flight, and what's that doing in your nervous system?
Yeah. I mean, anytime we're not in the rest and heal and digest state, we're going to end up with long-term health impacts. So there's a whole physical health side of this, but just even with our nervous system and our brain, if we're in fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, that's like an adaptive shutdown that your body is doing to try to protect itself. And when we're in that, like even our hormone signaling and like our decision making, everything goes offline. So we don't feel like our authentic selves, like we don't feel like our best selves. And so in polyvagal theory, where we talk about that fight or flight kind of thing, usually fawning is either dorsal vagal shutdown, like numb, like what we primarily have adapted to do when we think we're about to get eaten. So we
Yeah.
go numb and we freeze so that we can play dead. And, for some people, there's a lot of overlap with like, usually you end up in that kind of free state because you've been in fight or flight for so long.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, I mean, obviously shows up different for everyone, but I have noticed for me that since I've been paying attention to regulating my nervous system, which has been like so many years long journey, that has correlated with less people pleasing because I'm like actually in tune with, okay, am I calm right now? Like, why am I doing this? And I'm realizing a lot of people pleasing comes from a not calm place. Like it's exhausting to people please.
Hmm. Yeah. And if you are people pleasing all the time, I think you do learn to become numb to it and to shut down all of those objections that your brain is giving you, because
Yeah.
it's easier and less scary to do that than to confront what it is that you actually want to do.
Yeah. And I feel like people pleasing, man, like especially for women, it wasn't even a conscious choice. It was just like, oh, like men are like these, like, bigger, scarier, more powerful, whatever. And we're
Hmm.
supposed to defer because they could hurt us. When we watched movies and every single lit book that we read in high school, like there was not a single female protagonist. There were no female authors. Women were just the sidekicks. It's like, okay, like we're just supposed to do whatever makes the main character happy. So I never
Hmm.
thought of myself as a main character until way later after college. I was like, oh, there's all these other main characters in life and I'm just supposed to support them. So
Yeah.
I think it's so ingrained like culturally. It's not like I couldn't say I had any specific traumatic experience or any bad childhood or anything.
Yeah, same. I think it's just something that we naturally sort of fall into because of what we've been taught and what we see other women doing. I think the biggest thing, so obviously work with a lot of people pleasing, and the biggest thing that I've seen that keeps people stuck in that cycle is that they can't set boundaries or stick to boundaries. Not because they can't see that a boundary needs to be set or they don't know what boundary to set, it's the other person. So whenever you set a boundary with someone, you so at first you've taught them what they should expect from you. You are always available. You're always happy to help. You're always there to bail them out of a bad situation. Well, when you set a boundary and say, I'm not available for that anymore, I'm not doing that anymore, that person is like, oh, they've changed. This is something that I don't like. And they're going to push back on that boundary and try to not respect that boundary. And that's why it's so hard, because you've got to stand firm and be like, I said no. The trend for a while was like, no is a full sentence. No is a full sentence. People don't respect that all the time though. So you've got to stay firm and say, no, I'm not doing it. No, I'm not doing it. And you can even say, hey, I'm not trying to be mean, but I actually don't have time to do that. It is causing me more stress and I can't get what I need to get done for myself done. So no, I can't help you. And
Yeah.
so that's where people mess up. They then let that person cross the boundary over and over again. And every single time you do that, when you try to set a boundary again, it's going to be less effective and it's just going to make it harder and harder on you. And it gets really hard sometimes because sometimes the boundary is you're not allowed in my life anymore because that person is so toxic that you've got to cut them out. And that's really hard to do, especially when it's someone very close to you. And so I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest thing I've seen with people pleasing and why they get so stuck.
Yeah, that makes sense. While you're talking, it's making me think about how being an empath and being able to feel the
Mm,
expectations that the other person
yeah.
has, being more intuitive, I think sets you up for more people pleasing because, if you're already so self focused, you can't even imagine how upset it's going to make the other person. When you set a boundary, then it's so much easier to make that boundary. But when you're really in tune, and again, I think women have been societally trained to be very in tune, then you're going to know exactly how upset that person's going to be. And like it's going to weigh heavier because of that.
Yeah. And I really like that you brought up being an empath because I know some people are like, that's not real, whatever. Call it
Oh,
whatever you
it's
want.
real.
In therapy terms, we would call you a highly sensitive person. There's
Mhm.
books on this. So if you don't like empath, highly sensitive person,
Yeah.
same thing. If
And
you are a person that just picks up on other people's emotions or energy, then in addition to setting the boundaries, you also have to learn what is yours and what is not yours,
that was the biggest thing for me.
which is really hard because you can get, especially with like a spouse or a parent or a sibling, you can get really enmeshed. And when
Yeah.
they're upset, you become upset. And if you can take the time to sit down and say, why am I upset? Why am I anxious? Why am I whatever emotion?
Yeah.
Did that come from me? Or am I upset because my spouse is upset about something? And learning to differentiate is really hard. And being a highly sensitive person is really great in a lot of ways, but they do tend to people please a lot because it's so much easier to not feel someone else's pain or someone
Oh my
else's negative
gosh.
emotions.
Yes. And like as someone, I would say I'm a super highly sensitive person and like like you're just a sponge of all of these other beliefs and things in society because you can pick up expectations so well. And so like what the person expects you to do. You know that the belief that's out there in the culture and society you're in is that you should be supportive to this person or whatever. And so it's really hard to figure out what programming you're running that's from society and then like what's actually true to like how I want to live and like honor my life. So that was really hard for me to dismantle. Nope, that's something I picked up from a religion. That's something I picked up from my parents. That's something I picked up from, school culture. And it's like, well, actually, I don't need to do that thing, which was causing me to people please to fit that paradigm because that's not actually a paradigm that I value personally.
Yeah, that was something I also really had to work on. So, my therapist years ago actually taught me what a highly sensitive person was and told me, hey, you should read this book. I think you're a highly sensitive person because I was people pleasing so much. And once I figured that out, then became my like radical transition to that's not mine. I'm not picking it up.
And reminder to everyone that Katie was a badass parole officer after college. Talk about
Oh,
a
yeah.
transition.
I did I did a stint as a parole officer on my journey figuring out what
Yeah.
to do with my life. Yeah, I that's not a great job for a highly sensitive person.
I'm just saying, you must have like really done some work to not be a people pleaser because I know you were good at that job. So,
Yeah, no, I'm not even gonna say that. I'm not gonna say anything about working with that population, actually. That could be a whole episode. Anyways, so the boundary setting is, I
yeah,
think, like step one. If you're really having trouble, I think that's step one.
that makes sense. And I think with boundaries, like, I think the idea of control might come up because, like you said, you can only control what you do, but it's frustrating to not be able to control someone else's reaction. So, when they react to your boundaries with anger, like, that sucks that you can't control how the other person's going to react. You can only control what you do.
Yeah. And if you're having trouble dealing with the fact that they're angry or upset, y you can have some empathy for that. That's okay. Like, you just totally flip the switch, and that's gonna be hard for them. And so they may need some time away from you to figure out how they're now going to respond to this new boundary that you've set. So that's
Yeah.
also okay.
Yeah, I think that's really good to point out. Yeah. And I'm thinking about, just with people who are dealing with illness, like I've had some patients who we did the test because they were having crazy gut symptoms. Turns out they were reacting really badly to gluten. And so they had to cut gluten out. And when it was their partner's turn to cook the meal for like whatever day of the week, they were still cooking things with gluten and doing stuff like that. And that's a hard conversation to have. But I do think that people who face chronic health challenges are often put in situations where it's not just like, oh, I would have had more time if I said no to that project, but it's like, oh, I'm going to pay for this and my health is going to go downhill and my entire life is going to be affected if I don't stand up for myself. It's like high
Yeah.
stakes.
Yeah. That's kind of like extreme people pleasing, but I can definitely see how that would happen. And actually, on my way to work this morning, I was listening to the radio and I love listening to Kid Craddock in the morning. I've listened to them
You
for
still listen
years.
to?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I listen to Kid Craddock and they do Love Letters to Kelly. And this morning on Love Letters to Kelly, she was talking about she had a cousin who literally was such a people pleaser that she married this guy she didn't want to marry so that she didn't hurt his feelings. And then 8 months into the marriage, he wanted a divorce.
Oh man. See, you're not even doing the person a favor at that point because
No.
they deserve someone who really wants to be with them.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I couldn't get married to someone I didn't want to marry. That
That's
was
probably
wild.
the
But there's
most
like,
extreme example I could we could
yeah,
think
if
of.
you're out there thinking you're gonna marry someone to not upset them, like, please
That's a
take care.
lot. That's
Think
a
again.
lot. You know, a big one I have seen come up is like mold because mold is something that people have a lot of opinions on. And like, I, you know, I love everyone, but like most people have a very uneducated opinion about mold.
Sure.
And so, like I'll have a patient who is super reacting to mold. And for people who don't know about mold toxicity, while you're in the throes of it, if you get exposed once, it can reignite a flare for like 3 months. Like it's
Yeah.
not nothing.
We
So
have a
it's,
whole episode on this. That one of
yes,
our first episodes.
yes, it's a good episode. So I'll have people who are going to stay at their in-laws or something, and they'll be like, they want me to stay in this room. It is so moldy there. Like I react right away and I can't breathe and all this stuff. And I tell them that, and like they, the patient said that they tell the in-laws that, but they keep staying there because the in-laws say, "No, how dare you say my house is moldy?"
Uh,
And like it becomes a whole thing of like, this person that they're trying to set a boundary with is making it a personal attack against them to say that their house has
mhm.
mold. And it's like they're just trying to take care of their health. And this is one of those areas where if only we could all just have a ton of money because like just stay at a hotel. But like that adds up if you're going for a lot of holidays. But yeah, the mold one is hard because it's invisible and there's a lot like the main paradigm that everyone is running with mold is wrong. So it sucks to be an outsider on that one.
Yeah, that's a really tough one. And in that case, I would say like you need to bring your spouse in to be on your team and like sit down and explain this.
Yeah, a lot of times the spouse wants their family to like them, and so the spouse people pleases, and so they don't, stand up for their partner.
Yeah, it's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard. But I think another thing that I tell people all the time, and I'm not trying to make this like you don't owe anyone anything. You get to do whatever you want, regardless of consequences. I don't mean it that way, but like you really don't owe anyone anything. You
Yeah.
don't. Just because someone is a member of your family doesn't mean you have to drop everything for them. You totally can, but you don't have to. And I think sometimes people get stuck in this like, well, they did this for me, so I owe them something. No, you don't.
Yeah.
You if you feel like you owe them something, maybe it's something else, but don't be like affecting your health staying in a moldy house just because someone is your in-law.
And if anything, I would argue that that's not true kindness. You're doing it because of
Yeah.
what you think other people are going to think instead of because you want to do that thing from your heart. Like,
Yep.
it's like they're
Which
not
is
acting from your heart space. Yeah.
that's exactly what people pleasing is. That's a really good way to put it. If you're not acting from your heart space and you're acting out of
Your mental reasoning and stuff.
yes, yes, and what you think you should do, then you're
Yeah.
people pleasing.
Yep. And if you are doing things that you think you quote should do, then like you're going to be a lot more likely to end up with health symptoms because your body can't trust you to stand up for it. Like if it can't trust you to I had a friend the other day tell me that she walked in, she had got a massage and it was a terrible massage. And so
Oh
she
no.
actually like left halfway through it because she was like, her body felt really unsafe and she didn't want to put her body through sitting there. And I was like, that's honestly beautiful because, the people pleasing part of me wouldn't want to upset the massage therapist. And I think there's a
Hmm.
time and a place for everything. But in this case, when you're in a vulnerable position and it's putting you in fight or flight, then you are experiencing harm to your body. It's not like it's a neutral. And so she actually came back to that place one more time because there's several people that work there. And the only person on staff that day was that person. And so she actually turned and left. And like, I think
Hmm.
that when I was younger, I would have been like, wow, that was so rude of her. We call women rude for
Yeah.
protecting themselves. But now I'm like, wow, what a strong person because her body, if it can trust her to do that, her body's not going to send all these crazy symptom signals to try to get her attention and warn her about danger because it knows that she's got it. Like she's going to protect and show up for
Hmm.
her body.
Yeah, and there's an appropriate way to do that. You can say
Yeah.
nicely, "Hey, I don't really like the way that you're doing this. I would prefer to just go." And like
Yeah.
not make a huge deal about
You don't
it
have to
and
be like,
say
you
it.
suck. Like, no. Yeah.
No. Yeah, you don't have to be like, "You suck. I'm leaving this place. I'm leaving a 0-star review on Google." Like
Right.
you can do this stuff nicely. Again, people just assume like you're a bitch if you do this, but you're not.
Yeah.
There's an appropriate way to do this.
You know what that gets me thinking too is I think when we stop taking things personally, it's like if I stop taking something someone does personally, because it's not about me, it's about them, then you're not as scared to do something that would quote offend someone else because
Mhm.
they shouldn't take it personally either. Like you realize it's not personal. Like that was about my friend and her experience with her body and her trauma
Yeah.
had nothing to do with that massage therapist? So like in an ideal world, they wouldn't take that seriously and we would all just not take things personally.
Yeah. Yeah, that would make life a lot easier. Everything's not about you.
Yeah,
FYI.
that's so true. And one other thing I think is really fascinating when it comes to all this is like, why do we care so much whether other people like us? People pleasing is because you want other people to like you. It's what they
Hmm.
think about you. Like, why do we care so much? And I think that that is probably hardwired a little bit because of our tribe socialization mentality, like primally. Like,
Yeah.
if the tribe rejected us, like that was a death sentence. I think I don't think we don't want the tribe to reject us. I think that's like hardwired into us a little bit.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, we used to be more like animals.
Yeah.
So I learned this recently, like last year. We have chickens. We have 15 chickens at home, and some of the hens were brooding and sitting on eggs. And there were quite a few eggs, and they start hatching. But there was one chick that had some sort of like developmental issue. I don't know exactly what was wrong with it, but she just wasn't quite right. And the hens started pecking her and trying to get her to go away. So we had to separate her and she ended up not making it. But I didn't know they were so mean. It was like, oh no, there's something wrong with that one. Like, kick it out.
Yeah.
It was
That's
so sad.
crazy.
But yeah, humans used to be like that too.
Yeah. Yes. And so I think we all don't want to get pecked to death. So we're trying to like please everyone.
Yeah. Oh, that poor little chick makes me sad.
Aw.
Anyways.
And I learned that like sheep can like reject their lambs for it just seems like no reason, but they just pick up
Yes.
something and they're like, nope. It's so sad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, animals do that. They're ruthless.
It's true. So
They're
yeah,
not people pleasers.
we don't need to be ruthless. We don't need to peck people to death. But if we can start being personally chill with, other people setting boundaries that affect us, and if like we can be cool with people standing up for themselves and their bodies and stop taking things other people do personally, I think that helps us realize that like, that means other people shouldn't take things personally. And it's not about people liking me. It's about being my most authentic self operating from my heart space. So what I'm doing is authentic.
Yeah, exactly. I think you wrapped that up beautifully.
Well, is it time for our health trend review? Health trend audit?
Yes. Okay. You're going to hate this. So I have seen this ad several times on Instagram, and it's this app that, like, so on the surface, it seems fine. It gives you your ideal bedtime and ideal wake time, but it was giving some people, like, the whole ad is like, oh, I go to bed at 11:52, and then And then the other person is like, oh my gosh, if I go to bed at 11:52, I wake up so tired and groggy. The app told me to go to bed at 2:38. That's my ideal time. And I'm like,
In the
2
morning?
a.m.?
No,
That
that's a no.
doesn't, it doesn't seem right to me.
Are they telling these people to sleep like from 2 until like noon then to get enough sleep?
No, some of them it'll tell them they only need like 6 hours of sleep. So I looked this up a little bit before we got on here because I was like, okay, how is this working? So there's no like wearable that comes with the app. So no Aura Ring, no Apple Watch, nothing that's like tracking you in that way. It
Then
is
how?
it's based on the premise that people are carrying their phones around with them and they're looking at their phone when they wake up and right before they go to bed. And it's like
Uh,
using that data and it makes no sense to me. So I'm
Wait,
curious.
what? Is
Doc,
the phone doesn't even sit on your bed to track your sleep movements during the night?
no.
What?
Well,
How?
so I mean, I don't know
You,
if it can track your sleep movements while you're sleeping.
because
Surely it,
that's how the Apple apps used to be to like predict your like wake up start time, but that was only within like a 15-minute fluctuation. It was trying to catch you when you were like in lighter sleep, so you were moving a little bit.
yeah, so maybe it also does that. I didn't do like deep research, but
No,
what really
but
got me was
wow.
the telling people to like go to bed at 2 or 3 in the morning. So I'm curious, Dr. Rachel, what do you think about that?
I mean, I feel like that just feels like a whole body no, because the reason that the only reason that we would be like, quote, wanting to go to bed at 2 and our body would naturally be falling asleep at that time would be because of all the fake blue lights that we have and that things have messed up our circadian rhythm. It's not like, oh, so then just adapt to that. No, like we need a really good, robust circadian rhythm where research shows it's best to be asleep by 10, because from 10 to 2, no matter what, that's when we get like the best sleep. So that's interesting. I feel like that's got to be wrong. I would challenge anyone using that app to go camping for 3 nights straight and then see what your rhythm is. Because I promise you, you are not actually a night owl, even if you think
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah. So, okay. Then that brings me to this question and then we can wrap up. What about people that like say that they're a night owl?
I know. I do. Okay, so cortisol rhythm is different among different people. And that means you're getting a cortisol spike at night. Or, like in my case, when I was like in the throes of my chronic inflammation, it took that much of my moving all day for my lymph to drain so that I could feel good and like
Mm.
detox enough that my brain was clear. And then sometimes that's enough time from when you had your last meal at dinner that the histamine wears off. And so you have like a clearer brain. So most people that are night owls, I think, are actually less healthy because there's a reason that your brain is turning on at night instead of in the morning when like it should be. So I don't
Okay.
know. Obviously, there's going to be differences between people, but again, I would tell those people if you checked your inflammation, if you took anti-inflammatories, and if you went camping, I think most night owls are actually not really night owls, personally.
Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. Because there are people in my family that are like, have been night owls their whole life, like kind of to an extreme. So I was
Yeah.
just curious.
Yeah. Well, okay. And last note on that, because I love this. I have noticed too that when I'm in a really like densely populated city, again, because I'm like super sensitive, I think all the background noise and all the cars in the
Oh,
distance and even just everyone being on their phone and like cell signals, like people's thoughts, like all of that energetically, I think a lot of people who are actually sensitive love the night because it's peaceful and everyone else's thoughts and emotions are asleep.
okay. That makes sense.
Anyway, that's my personal woo-woo approach.
Cool.
Well, this
All
was
right.
fun. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Hope you got something helpful out of this.
Yeah. We'll catch you in the next one.
Thanks for joining us for another weekly reset. If you loved hanging out with us today, subscribe so you never miss an episode, and share this with a friend who could use a little calm and connection too.
This show is for education and inspiration, not medical advice. To learn more or connect with us, check out the show notes below. Until next time, take care of your mind, your body, and your heart.